Well, does everyone have their poker chip? If you got your poker chip, get it out. Get it out. If you don't have your poker chip, you are a failure as a human being, and I still love you. You know I'm just joking. So I'm going to say we exist too, and then you're going to say love God and love others. Are you ready? We exist too. If you're new to the chapel, we just like this phrase. I know that a lot of churches can sometimes get caught up, including myself. We will make up phrases that are our mission statement, but this one was right out of Jesus' mouth. What is the most important commandment? To love God and love others, to love your neighbor as yourself. This is our reminder. This is my reminder. I carry it with me daily. I put it next to my speedometer when I'm driving, to love God well and love others, because I am prone to forget that truth often. I am prone to love myself and think that I am the king of the universe. So this is the reminder to stop being addicted to ourselves and to really love God and love others with all that is in us. If you do not have a poker chip, there are some in the back. We got some new colors today, so I know there was some poker chip trading going on. I felt like I was watching one of those weird culty Disney pin things happen. But you can trade it out. Like I said, if you lost it, you do not get another one. And I know some of you are thinking who were here last week. Didn't you lose yours? Technically, mine was stolen by the guy who was in the third row because I dropped it during my sermon, and he picked it up, and his face just looked like sin all over it. He said, "You're not getting this back." He swallowed it. So anyway, I got a new one, purple, because it's the Lord's color. Keep your chip with you. If you don't have one, be sure to grab one on your way out today. Do we have some left still? I think, okay, we've got some left still. Good. I only got the first 200 went in the blink of an eye, so the next 100 hopefully will last a little bit longer. Let's pray for our message and see what God would speak to us. Father, your word is eternal, and its stories were recorded for a purpose. You printed this. You had this recorded so that we could know you more, so that we could know ourselves more, so that we could learn what it means to follow you more. I pray that today you would give wisdom to us, that you would give us a heart that beats like your heart for those around us, that you would give us eyes to see opportunities to love people well. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Well, there she was, the woman. She was walking through the desert, and as she approached the well, she saw a man there. So she brushed the tears from her eyes. You see, she had just been passed by another group of women who were heading home for the day. And that group of women had given her dirty looks. And those of you women in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. The dirty looks that another group that disapproves of you can give you because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. This girl has had a broken life. She wiped her tears as she approached the well, and she began drawing water. And in that culture, in her day and age, you had to walk out to get water every single day. And every single day, she walked to that well, and tears would fill her eyes. But this day, something different happened. This day, as she was pulling water, a man came up. And the man looked at her with eyes she hadn't seen before. She knew the eyes of men because she had had 5 husbands. But this was a different look. And this man had no business talking to her because she knew and he knew that they were from different sides of the track. It was Jesus. And Jesus, as he often does, broke into her life. And he said, "Give me a drink." And she tells him, "You're not allowed to talk to me. We're from different sides. You're from this side, I'm from that side." And then Jesus does what he always does to you and I. He says, "If you knew who you were talking to, you would ask me for water." But being the smart girl that she was, because she had found a way to make it in life. She had found a way to make it, even though some of her choices had led down bad roads that broke her life, she was always finding a way to live. And she said to Jesus in the way that only cunning, shrewd women do, "You've got no bucket." She told the creator of the universe, "You've got no bucket." She didn't know it was him. She was still reeling from the fact that she was there in the middle of the day and she had no female friends, and all the females in her town would have mocked her and ridiculed her. And now there's this guy with no bucket telling her, "Hey, if you knew who I was, you'd tell me to get water." You know, if I were Jesus in that moment, I would do one of those Force Awakening things where I would just bring up a ball of water that floated with THX special effects, and I'd splash her in the face. But that's why I'm not Jesus, and Jesus is Jesus. Jesus instead goes on in the story to to speak to this woman and says, whoever drinks your bucket will be thirsty again. Whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Now, I know that we all understand this because we all live here. Never thirst again. Could you imagine never thirsting again? I was listening and talking to some of our volunteers in the back, and they were telling me that their son has been waking up every night for the past few nights at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock in the morning. And all he's wanted is a sip of water. I think after the second night, that's when I put a super soaker by my bed. I just aim it at him. Say, go back to bed. But they're better parents than I am. This woman Jesus talked to, he didn't talk to with harshness. He extended grace and mercy. This woman that had had 5 husbands and was sleeping with a guy that was not her husband. Now the question I have for you and I today is, why would a woman like that ever come into one of our churches? Capital C churches. Because if I'm being totally honest, churches are not historically a place where we welcome sinners. We say that we do. We say, sinners are welcome here. But, when sinners walk in church doors, that we've said they're welcome here, we often give them a totally different vibe. When I was a youth pastor, I really wanted to try this, but it got shot down by the elder board where I worked. And a lot of things got shot down. In case you're wondering how wild I was as a youth pastor, imagine me as a senior pastor, but then having zero knowledge of church regulations. So it was bad. The maintenance crew hated me. Multiple times I damaged property. I almost burnt down a multi-million-dollar building when I lit a cow tongue on fire to teach them about the tongue and how it's set on fire by hell itself. That's in James. So I wanted the kids to remember it, so I had soaked a cow tongue in lighter fluid all night. Didn't realize that if you put a match to that, it really explodes black smoke. So these were the types of things I did as a youth pastor. And one of the things that I asked, and I just don't understand why the elders said no. I said, hey, there's this area called, it's now called Pacific Coast Highway. It used to be called Hill Street. It's where we had a lot of prostitutes where I grew up. And I asked the elders, I said, hey, if I found a prostitute that would be willing to come to youth group just as she is, would we let her in for like a moral lesson and have her share her story with the students? And they said, absolutely not. So you would understandably know exactly what I did, right? No, I didn't do that. That would be so bad. But I thought to myself, okay, here's one woman who has reached a bottom of life to such a degree that she had to sell her body to make ends meet because she had children. We had built a relationship with a handful of them because they would come to our church for food. And then when I asked, can they come and share their story to a group of high schoolers or to a group of college-age kids? The answer was absolutely not. I think we've shot ourselves in the foot. We've used church language with one mouth, but our actions are telling a whole different story. I would hope that one day people could come in here who sin differently than me and you and feel like they could be loved and forgiven by God because of what Jesus has done. Because when Jesus approached the woman at the well, I'm not sure that we would have let her in. By we, I mean a capital We, church, global we. I'm not sure that churches appreciate people who have checkered pasts. And here's the secret that none of us want to share. We all have checkered pasts. None of you wants me to know all of your secrets. None of you wants me to know what you're doing in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day. And every single person here is trying our best to put up the shiniest version of ourselves that we possibly can. But Jesus says, bring me your checkered past, because I'm here to give you living water. Stop drinking out of a cup that you'll have to go to again and again, because I have life for you. But that life comes at a price that you don't yet understand. And that's where it takes us into Colossians today. In Colossians chapter 4, verse 2, we hear this from the Apostle Paul. Continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. At the same time, pray also for us that God may open to us a door for the word to declare the mystery of Christ, on account of which I am in prison, that I may make it clear which is how I ought to speak. Verse 5, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. May God bless the reading of his word. I want to talk a little bit about the different chunks here, and we're going to work our way backwards. So when it says walk in wisdom toward outsiders, the Bible is using this language that there are people in the family and there are people outside of the family. And I think we might have confused wisdom with anger police. Because I've been watching the news. I always have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the blogosphere. Unfortunately, I subject myself to the opinions of 22-year-olds that still live with their mothers. And I do this, and it drives me crazy. Because right now, what's the big issue that everybody's talking about that nobody will stop talking about? Somebody help me out here. Target, right? And in case you've lived under a rock, you've read blogs, you've seen news posts, and it's been just gnawing away at my spine for this reason. This verse tells us to walk in wisdom toward outsiders. Who is the most wise person who has ever walked the face of planet Earth? His name starts with a J and rhymes with Jesus. Okay, I just want to make sure you don't get it wrong. That's all I'm doing. I'm going to give you the answer in first grade form so that you're like, is it G squirrel? You know, I don't want that. Jesus was the wisest person that ever walked the face of the earth. So if we are walking in wisdom, we're going to walk like Jesus. If we're going to speak in wisdom, we're going to speak like Jesus spoke. Now there's a big difference between simply saying right and wrong and speaking like Jesus spoke. There's this slogan we use in Christianity, and it terrifies me, and I've heard this from so many pastors and so many Christians over the year, and here's the phrase: I'm just speaking the truth in love, which is a total code word. If you don't know what that's code for, speaking the truth in love is Christianese, Christian code word for I'm about to be a jerk to your face. If somebody says, I'm just speaking the truth in love, brother or sister, what they're saying is, I either just verbally assaulted you or I'm about to. But in that passage, speaking the truth in love is actually speaking the truth of who Jesus is and what Jesus did for them to them. It's not just saying, I get to say true things about you, because if we want to play the true things game, all we're doing, once again, is looking at the shiny exterior and ignoring the heart. And believe me, I'm against sin. I do not like sin. I do not like it because sin breaks down life. I do not like sin because at its core, sin is saying that I want to serve something else and I want to enjoy something else more than I enjoy God. It's not just the list of rules that you break. It's literally saying that, God, I find you less enjoyable, less satisfying than I find this shallow, temporary thing. And Jesus, when he walked with outsiders, and what Paul's telling us today is to walk with outsiders with wisdom. Now, how many of you guys would say you know a wise person? Wise person? Anyone know a wise person? Okay, so that's really sad, because that means some of us literally don't even know a wise person, or someone we consider wise. Now, wisdom is different from knowledge. I think wisdom is the application of your passion and experience and knowledge to the daily grind of life. Now, there are some of us here, and we know these people, who lack what we would call common sense, right? Anyone know one of those people that lacks common sense? Yeah. Don't raise your hand and look at your wife or husband. That was really bad, you guys. The people that lack common sense are like my friend's dad, who would come home on his lunch hour, and we would crack up because we lived in the street. He would come home for his lunch hour, park in the street, open his door, leave his car on, with the door wide open on a fairly narrow road, and go eat lunch inside for an hour, regularly. He would forget, here we go, lunch hour, keep my car on, walk on out, door wide open. And it's just sitting there for any local teenager to joyride around in. All we had to do was park it back there, leave it on, and open the door. And then he would come out an hour later. That's a common sense thing. Paul says to walk in wisdom, and some of you are thinking, I want wisdom. Well, there's good news. For those of you who want wisdom, here's what you do. James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. If you want wisdom, you got to start by asking for it. God, I need wisdom. My life choices have put me on a trajectory that are destroying my family, destroying my friendships, destroying my career, destroying my life. I need to know how to better manage my life with wisdom, especially my relationships. Because if we go all the way back to the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman, if you've never read that story, it's in John 4. It'll take you about 90 seconds to read. It is one of the most beautiful stories. Because nowhere in it is Jesus reprimanding her. Nowhere in it is Jesus writing angry blog posts. Nowhere in it is Jesus making memes and taping them to the back of her shirt so that she is shamed and humiliated. Nowhere in it. And I've giggled at some of these Target memes, you guys. I mean, I think I went from living in one Republican community to another one. I think that's what happened. And don't get mad at me, I'm not bashing Republicans. I'm saying that in the scheme of our life, our allegiance is to the kingdom of God light years before it's to any political party. Because if every single one of us are being honest, this election year, it's a jacked up mess. I'm not meeting very many happy Republicans or Democrats. Everyone's saying this language, well, this is lesser of two evils. Like, we've gotten to a point in our country where the leader of our nation, we're saying, who is the least worst? That's the line. If you just put it in plain language, who is the least worst? Whether you're feeling the burn, making America great, voting for someone just because they have different plumbing, that's a woman, by the way. Like, I'm not against those things, but that shouldn't be our primary voting strategy, right? As followers of Christ, we need to walk with wisdom and outsiders, especially this year, especially right now. Because if all that we're going to do is slam people on the other side of the alley, I want you to read the Bible with that same lens. I want you to think about how Christ loved people. Because when he sat down with the woman at the well, he could have looked at her and known all of her past and said, well, you've already had 5 husbands. You're sleeping with this guy now that you're living with. You don't want to be married to him. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put you in this box which says, do not be my friend. Which says, I'm not going to accept you. Which says, I'm going to write memes about you because you're different. I'm going to post about you because I dislike the way that you're living so much. Now, was that person in sin? Yes. Are certain people in sin in our area? Yes. Are we in sin in our lives? Yes. And it's not to say that we don't deal with sin, but we deal with it with grace and tenderness and kindness, with wisdom that draws people to us and not pushes people away. I had a great conversation with a man here, and this was a few months ago. He's since moved. He's moved away. He's moved to the other side of Tampa, whatever that's, Polk County beach area. He's moved over there. But he said to me in his last Sunday, Pastor, I just wanted to thank you. Because I've been coming here for a few months, and I love hearing the message of God's love for me. And I've been a struggling homosexual for my whole life. I've struggled with it. I've had same-sex relationships, and I've pushed away from it, and I've gone back and forth. And he said, it wasn't until I heard the message of God's grace that I finally found the strength to say that my identity is no longer in my sexuality, but it's in who God has me as a child, saved, loved, forgiven. And he said he still struggled, but he wanted to thank me, and he said he wanted to thank the chapel family for people that knew and still welcomed him here. So that one's a bonus for you. And we should have more people like that coming in here if we're speaking with wisdom that reaches out like Christ reached out to us. Because we are all desperately rascals, and we all need God's love. And we've done this before. If we knew all of each other's sin, nobody in here would like the other people. So ask God for wisdom. Let your speech be gracious. Ephesians 4:29 says, do not let any corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for the building up as it fits the occasion. So before you say something, ask in your head, does this build up or tear down? Is this going to be life-giving, or is this me spewing rust at this person's heart? That's a big difference. That's a big difference from I'm speaking the truth in love, and then we drop angry bombs at people. Now, you know where this is really hard to do? You know where it's really, really hard to speak kindness and building up? Right in the middle of your own home and relationships. The closest people to you are the ones that you have all the ammo in the world to tear down, right? And they're the ones that give you all the reasons in the world to do it. It's like this. When you get married and you have children, If you imagine your mouth is a giant bazooka, okay, this is what I do. I just think of weird stuff because it works in my brain. It may not work in yours, it works in mine. When you get married, the gift you get on your wedding day is not just a beautiful bride or a handsome husband, it's a rocket in your bazooka. And then your spouse will give you 100 reasons every year as to why you should aim that destructive mouth at her and shoot anger toward her or him. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because you're not married. It's because you're single. Or it's because you're engaged or you've been married for less than 2 weeks. I love the people who are like about to get married and they have all the answers of how marriage is going to work. We're so the exception to every rule that's ever existed because we are not two sinners getting married. We are two perfect humans. And all I see is, man, they're just loading those rockets in there. You just wait for that first fight, and it's going to be over something dumb, like burnt eggs. And then 10 years later, you're going to be there fighting over coffee, saying, how do we get here? We need therapy. And then you have kids, and your kids loaded in. And we're so prone to shoot these explosive, destructive words at those who we care about most deeply. And you know what the craziest thing about words? You can never take them back. No. The other person can forgive you. But some of you know the power of words so deeply that there's something that somebody said to you more than 15, 20, 25 years ago that you are holding on to like a dart. And you know it and I know it. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Do you want to hear a marriage fail? This is one of my favorite marriage fails of all time. I pray that they're not podcasting my sermon this week. One of my closest friends, we worked in ministry together back in the day, 2005, 2006. He's one of my great volunteer leaders in student ministry. He shared with me a to not do in marriage. His wife was pregnant. I believe it was her first or second kid. And they were watching a documentary on these rare whales they were like a pink beluga whale. Okay? So keep in mind, wife, 9 months pregnant, documentary on pink beluga whales. You already know where this is going. It's already bad. And the beluga whales, they eat these shrimp, they get all pink. It just so happened that at this time, as I remember the story, his wife was eating seafood. So he looks over at her, and with the tenderness of a loving husband says, babe, you're just like the pink beluga whales. Now, do you think she's ever forgotten that? Now, here's the reality of that. Do you think, and I don't know every woman, I'm not pretending to know, I'm just me. Do you think that she's ever stepped on a scale, gained a pound, and not thought of that? And that's a phrase said in jest over 20 years ago. And I know that haunts them because I've heard them tell the story enough times to where you can say a story and laugh about it because you're pretending it's funny because it's only half funny. And in our marriages, in our relationship with outsiders, we're doing the same thing. On a post I posted recently, my son and I were at Disney World last Friday, and if you didn't see the post, I think it was photographic genius personally, because I simply took a post of Jackson after he had melted down, and then I found this cool artwork that said Orlando with fireworks, and he had the saddest face on, like somebody just punched his baby brother, and just weeping, crying 30 minutes, and then I wrote the happiest place on earth. And I know that, it's mean of me to do this to my future children, but unless I do this, no one else will make photos for their wedding photography montage. So I'm getting these pictures selected for them, and one of my friends wrote, you do know that these can all be used in his future background checks. And I was like, well, lucky him, Disney's never going to hire him. Like, what's the downfall of this picture? But the reality of that moment is that, A, my kid is just like me. We both cry every time we go to Disney. B, in that moment, I was trying to let my speech be gracious. I was trying to season it with salt so I could preserve his joy, preserve his attitude. And the question we have to ask is, how should I answer each person, not just verbally, because we don't any longer live in a verbal world. If you've avoided social media to this date, kudos to you, good job, but the world is changing. If you're one of those anti-social media people, you're just going to have very, very few conversations in the future. The reality is the words that I'm talking about here and being wise with outsiders doesn't just apply to what comes out of our mouth, but also has to apply with what posts on our Facebook, with what we send out to our Snapchat story, with what we put on Twitter and Instagram, because those things are speaking for us long after we have shut our mouths. Long after we have stopped talking, our Facebook and Instagram are still talking. And I don't know that I would say they are seasoned with salt. I don't know that they're preserving the character of Christ. I don't know that we've posted things that are going to be received well by the woman at the well. Because the woman at the well today is the actual person who is transgendered and not a pedophile. I need you to understand that. The woman at the well today is the person who is struggling with their sexual identity, doesn't know what they believe in, doesn't know what to feel, because one side of culture says this and the other says that. One says perversion, one says don't accept yourself as you are. One is loving certain artists and one is hating others. Now, for the record, I believe God made them male and female. He created them for a purpose to exist that way. And sin breaks down everything in life. Sin breaks down sexual identity. Sin breaks down the thought process that we have. Sin breaks down who we're attracted to, who we're not attracted to. And we should not be about simply pushing away people because they sin differently than us. The way that we talk to them should draw them in, not only toward loving kindness and forgiveness, but toward truth and who God is and his holiness. And Jesus had this down pat. Obviously, he was God in the flesh, so he could do this. Now, here's the kicker with all of this. With your social media, the things you say here, you can't go back. It's already said. But you can go forward. You can make your voice one that encourages people and draws people in instead of one that pushes people away. I know it's hard, but this is what Paul is telling the Colossians. These are close to his final words. And he's saying, you want to know what I have to say to you finally? Stop acting so foolish with your words. Use your time well. And I'm guilty of this. Man, I picked this thing up so quick. When I went to a retirement ceremony recently, I went to Tammy, who sang up here today. I went to her retirement ceremony. You should have seen me when they told me I couldn't take my phone into the central command. So I'm like, who do you think you are? And they're like, we're the U.S. government. I'm like, oh. Here's my phone. But about 300 times, I was like, I'm on Instagram that. Ooh, Snapchat that. Ooh, Facebook. Ooh. And it was just like I was itching my leg. I should have just stood right there because someone stole my phone from me. And I know some of you are thinking, well, I don't do social media. You will do it. I promise you will. Because if you think it's crazy now, just wait until the future. So here's what we're all doing. We're all going around talking to each other in a conversation like this. If you don't believe me, go to anywhere. Go to the Brandon Mall today and just stand in front of people with cell phones as they're walking. It's a glorious experiment, especially if you're my size. Okay, so you'll walk in, you'll see a group of teenage guys, teenage girls, or moms with their kids in strollers, literally strolling while doing this. I love just going and standing. I'm like, I ain't going to move. This is chicken, and I'm going to win because my eyes are on you. And they come, you kick the front stroller wheel sideways, the baby falls out. And you say, you were watching where you were going because we're all doing this. Now, here's what you're thinking. Okay, I don't post very much on there. That's fine. But could you post things on there that encourage people? If you're going to, is it going to be encouraging? If you're going to, is it going to be the type of speech that draws people in? And I already know what some of you are thinking who are friends with me on Facebook. Okay, Pastor Ryan, I'm friends with you on Facebook and Instagram or whatever, and all I know about you is that you love bacon. Yes, I do. Which is why this morning somebody gave me a bacon necklace. Praise the Lord. Okay? By the way, in case those of you who are wondering, who follow me on social media, the bacon chapstick, bad idea. Because it feels like bacon grease, and it tastes enough like bacon grease to where I was just hungry all day until I got the chapstick off my mouth. That was a sidebar. Okay, back to wisdom and grace. You use every way that you speak as a way that would draw people toward God, not push people away. And this year, just so you know, I've got a group on my Facebook page, and everybody that's part of the chapel family I've put into this group so I could just see your news feed when I want to. That in case you're wondering how I know what you're doing in life, that this is how I professionally stalk you. Yes, I'm a professional. Yes, I'm a stalker in a non-creepy way. And I watch that. And I say, God, how can I pray for these families? God, why are they so angry? God, let's work with this group and this population to draw them towards you with wisdom and how they can interact with others. Because if we're pushing people away with our Facebook page, they're never going to walk in here and sit in one of these chairs. Because if you think that the first time somebody ever looks at the chapel is from this parking lot, you are dead stinking wrong. The first place people look at this chapel is as soon as they find out you go here. And then they remember every conversation they've ever had with you. They remember everything you've ever posted about. They remember everything that has ever come out of your mouth, your facial expression. And they say, that's the chapel. The front door to the chapel is your news feed. The front door of the chapel is a conversation you had with your neighbor yesterday. The front door to the chapel is the family you had over for dinner. The front door to the chapel is the way that you text your coworkers. Now, if some of you are convicted, that's okay. Ask God for wisdom, and he will give you wisdom. Here's the next thing I need to talk about. Time. Everyone say time. How many of you wish or have ever said the phrase, I wish there were more hours in a day, or something like that? Okay. I'm telling you right now, no, you do not. Because you know what you would do with more hours in the day? The same exact thing you're already doing with your hours in the day. You say, if I only had 2 more hours in the day, because man, 2 more hours of emailing, my life would be complete. It would not. As well as you manage 24 hours, that's exactly how well you would manage 36 hours. I know some of you, no, that's not true. If I had just 10 extra hours a day, you wouldn't imagine I could be a better husband, wife, father, worker, blah, 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 blah. No. How you manage your time today, and how Paul says to manage your time, to make the best use of your time, this is going to shape the rest of your life. Because time is the one thing we can't ever get back. Tick-tock, tick-tock. By the end of today's service, you'll literally be 90 minutes closer to your D-Day, that's Death Day, than you were before. I literally just shaved off 90 minutes of your life with some songs, some corny jokes, and some Jesus. Boom. A little bit closer, friends. You're welcome. Because when God says make the best use of our time, here's what one of my church fathers put down. His name is Jonathan Edwards. I have a poster with all of these. They're called the Resolutions of Jonathan Edwards. And here's some of the things he said just about time. And every one of them, for the most part, starts with resolved, because these were his life resolutions. Resolved to never lose one moment of time, but improve it in the most profitable way I possibly can. Resolved never to do anything which I should be afraid to do if it were the last hour of my life. Resolved to inquire every night as I am going to bed wherein I have been negligent, what sin I have committed, and wherein I have denied myself, also at the end of every week, month, and year. This guy was type A to the maximum. Do you guys know those type A people, the drivers in your life? They're go, 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 go. They never stop. It's like they don't even drink coffee. They just breed coffee in their brain. This is Jonathan Edwards, and he's making up rules for his life. And go back to that last one there, Corey. Resolved so that at the end of every week, month, and year, he's saying, did I do as best I could in regards to sin, in regards to denying myself the right things and doing the right things? And then he only gets crazier. Resolved to ask myself at the end of every day, week, and month, wherein I could have possibly, in any respect, have done better. Now, I'm not going to put you on this type A course, because not everyone is type A. Not everyone is going to write as much as Jonathan Edwards wrote. Not everyone has that same brain. And I know some of you do. So for those of you that do, for those of you that are somewhat like me, like our brains are broken, and you can resolve to do things, make some resolutions. Make them every year. If your wife doesn't want to join you, husbands, make resolutions for your next year of marriage, or vice versa. If your husband doesn't want to join you, if your husband's a bum, you just make your own resolutions, women. So this is what I'm going to accomplish in marriage next year. This is what I'm going to accomplish this week. And look at your life and make the best use of your time, not for yourself, but how are you loving God and loving others with the 168 hours you have in a week? Because I promise you we're going to find out that our time is getting wasted very, very often. God doesn't just want you for an hour a week. He wants you for 168 hours a week. He doesn't want you to lay burdens on you. He wants to come to you to set you free. So all the way back to the story with the woman at the well. There she was, thirsty, mocked, in pain. Jesus says, go get your husband. And Jesus knew that she had no husband. So I don't know how that plays out in your mind, but in my mind it's like Jesus is constantly getting people to where they need to go by asking the perfect questions and saying the right things at the right time. And she says, I have no husband, I've got 5. Oh yeah, you've got a bunch of them. You've got 5, you're living with this guy. But let's come all the way circle back around. She then tries to deflect his question with a religious question. Well, Jesus, thanks for telling me about my husbands, but we worship here, you worship over there. Which one of us are right? She deflects. Don't be a deflector as a Christian. Don't be someone who dodges the tough questions. Don't be someone who gets sucked into the debates that are never ending. If you have a friend like that does never-ending debates, there's a feature on Facebook called Click Hide. Hide posts from all people. So if you're not familiar with Facebook, you can hide the posts that everyone says and they still think they're your friend. Now, I wish there was a feature like that in real life where I could just click and hide somebody's posts. I can't wait for the day that I can turn down somebody's volume. It's coming. We're all going to have contacts, like integrated Wikipedias are walking around. It's going to be the best because I just want to have that. Not the mark of the beast. I know some of you are freaking out. What's the mark of the beast? No, that's really cool contact lenses. But so often I want to click hide post. Click hide post. Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus says, I'm not going to fall for your rabbit trail. I want you to know that if you come to me, you get living water. And some of you are thinking right now, okay, if I give up 168 hours a week to Jesus, it sounds really, 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 really hard and maybe boring. Now, if you give it up to religion, where you just look shiny and you try to be as kind as you can, but you're not actually loving God and loving others first, it will be boring and difficult. But if you wake up each morning and say, how can I love God and love others today, and find a way to do that day, your life will be full of adventure. The last adventure I took that some of you may or may not have seen was I woke up a few Mondays ago and said, I'm not going to eat until I feed someone that's hungry today. That was my commitment to myself. I don't know why it came into my head, but I popped up like a daisy on Monday and said, that's it. I have so much food in my life after Costco days that I can always eat. Today I'm not going to eat until I feed somebody. And I didn't have any plan. I just woke up and I Googled, okay, where am I going to find somebody near a food bank? Food bank. Navigate. Boom. Got to the food bank. I said, is there anyone that's hungry here? Nope, we feed people downtown. Then I met this cool ministry, and they toured me in the warehouse, and they had a great time, and I got to hang out with the people there, and I said, okay, I'm going downtown. I'm hungry. Went to this place, there was Metropolitan Ministries downtown, and I got to meet them and hang out with them, and I took a tour of the whole place. I had not planned to take a tour of this ministry. I had not planned to meet anybody there. By the end of my tour, one of the people that was there, I ended up praying for them, and they were literally just crying, sharing their life story, and all they were doing was giving me a tour. And I'm like, God, this person must have needed your love and comfort today. So I prayed with them, sent them on their way, 12 o'clock, still hungry. So for those of you who lived here for a long time, if you're looking for someone who's hungry, where can you go in Tampa? Starts with the E and ends with a bore. You guys are geniuses today. I love it. Ebor. I just start walking on Ebor. And then I find 2 guys, and I see them sitting outside the 7-Eleven. Hey, you hungry? And they said, yes. And I said, yes. Went inside, and I got one of those big old nasty 7-Eleven hot dogs. Sat down with my friends Damon and Hezekiah, and I said, what's your name, man? He goes, my name is Man. I said, no, what's the name your mother gave you? Nobody can pronounce it, man. I said, what's the name your mother gave you? Hezekiah. I said, if I can't pronounce Hezekiah, I'm a bad pastor. It's one of my names of my people and homeschooled children across the nation. So we hung out. It's not a joke. It's just insider knowledge. If you homeschool your kids, you name them Hezekiah, Josiah, Jebediah, Jedediah. All the way up to 19 kids and counting. But so that's so mean. They don't podcast me, whatever. So I'm hanging out with them, and we're eating, and I'm so happy because I'm eating. And this is all because one day I woke up and said, God, how can I love you and love others before I love myself? Because I am not on this list. Because I naturally love myself. Well, eventually, as the story goes, I got in trouble with the police, but that's okay. That's another vlog for another day. What are you going to do tomorrow with the time that you have to use wise words that draw people in? What are you going to do today to use wisdom and grace and tenderness to draw people toward God? Because God alone has the cup of living water that everyone's looking for as they're sipping on the last drink of whatever this world is offering them. And you have today to make that change. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your word.